Rock music loves to pretend it's all about guitars, the solos, the distortion, the dramatic poses. But here's the truth no one likes to admit out loud. Without the bass, rock music collapses completely. The bass is the spine, the heartbeat, the thing holding everything together while everyone else shows off. And yet, bass players spent decades standing slightly in the shadows, quietly doing the hardest job in the band, locking the groove, anchoring the song, and making sure the crowd actually feels the music instead of just hearing it. So today, we're finally giving bass its moment. These are the bass lines that didn't just support songs, they defined them. The kind of lines you recognize instantly, the kind that make your head nod before you even realize what's happening. What's the kind that prove bass players have been running the show all along? Let's start with the bass line that single-handedly turned a rock band into a dance floor phenomenon. Another one bites the dust. The moment that bass line starts, everything else becomes optional. John Deacon created one of the most iconic grooves in music history, and he did it with restraint, confidence, and perfect timing. No flashy fills, no unnecessary movement. Just a bass line so powerful it carries the entire song on its back. This line didn't just cross genres, it erased the borders between them. Rock fans loved it, funk fans respected it, pop fans danced to it, and suddenly Queen had one of the biggest hits of their career, driven almost entirely by bass. If you've ever doubted how much power lives in four strings, this song ends the argument immediately. Now let's rewind to a bass line that doesn't rush, doesn't flex, and somehow still commands absolute attention. Come Together. Paul McCartney wasn't interested in showing off here. He was interested in feel. This bass line slinks. It creeps. It moves with attitude. It doesn't ask for permission. It just settles in and dares the rest of the band to keep up. What makes it special is how conversational it feels. The bass doesn't just follow the song, it talks back to it. It's melodic, confident, and perfectly placed. Strip it away, and the song loses its entire personality. That's how you know a bass line has earned its place in history. Next, a bass line that proved odd time signatures could still groove. Is Money. Roger Waters took a song written in 7/4 time, already a risky move, and anchored it with one of the most recognizable bass patterns ever recorded. That opening riff is unmistakable. You don't need context. You don't need vocals. The bass tells you exactly where you are. What's brilliant about this line is how it balances complexity and simplicity. It sounds effortless, but it's doing real work. It makes an unusual rhythm feel natural, even comfortable. That's not easy, and it's why this bass line remains one of the most studied and admired in rock history. Now let's talk about a bass line that feels like floating. Walking on the Moon. Sting understood something crucial. Bass doesn't always need to move fast to be powerful. This line breathes, it leaves space. It floats between notes like it's suspended in midair. Yes, the brilliance here is restraint. The bass doesn't crowd the song, it defines its atmosphere. It creates tension and release without ever rushing. And once you notice it, you realize the entire track is built around that pulse. It's proof that sometimes the smartest thing a bass player can do is less. Next up, a bass line that sneaks in quietly before you realize how much work it's doing. Ramble On. John Paul Jones doesn't announce himself here. He slips in underneath the acoustic opening, weaving around the melody, adding movement without drawing attention away from the song. But once the track builds, you realize the bass has been steering the whole thing from the beginning. This line is playful, musical, and incredibly fluid. It doesn't just support the song, it dances with it. And that's why Led Zeppelin's rhythm section was so devastatingly effective. The bass wasn't just following the guitar, it was having its own conversation. Now let's shift to a bass line that oozes swagger. Sweet Emotion. Before Steven Tyler ever says a word, the bass has already set the tone. That opening line is dirty, funky, and unmistakably cool. It feels like the soundtrack to slow-motion confidence. Tom Hamilton's bass line here isn't complicated, but it doesn't need to be. It locks into the groove so hard that everything else falls into place naturally. This is bass as attitude, bass as mood, bass as the reason the song feels larger than life. Next, we come to a bass line that didn't just shape a song, it shaped an entire generation. My generation, John Entwistle changed the role of bass forever with this one. So while most bass players were still expected to stay politely in the background, Entwistle stepped forward and said, "Actually, I'm going to play lead now." This line is aggressive, melodic, and fearless. It pushes the song forward with raw energy. It refuses to be ignored. And it opened the door for bass players to step out of the shadows and claim space in rock music. Without this bass line, rock history looks very different. Now let's talk about a bass moment that feels like a slow burn until it explodes. The chain. John McVie's bass line doesn't show up right away. It waits. It builds. It makes you forget it's coming. And then suddenly, there it is. Driving, relentless, impossible to ignore. That final section of the song is one of the most powerful examples of bass-led momentum in rock history. It doesn't just support the climax, it is the climax. Every note hits with purpose, and once it starts, there's no turning back. Now we move into a bass line that feels anxious, nervous, and perfectly uncomfortable. Psycho Killer. Tina Weymouth created a bass line that feels like a pulse you can't escape. It's repetitive, tense, and oddly hypnotic. It doesn't overpower the song, it unsettles it. This is bass as storytelling. The line mirrors the emotional state of the song itself. It's proof that bass doesn't just carry rhythm, it carries psychology. And once you lock into it, the song becomes impossible to shake. Finally, we close with a bass line that sounds like cool itself. Lowrider. This bass line doesn't rush, it doesn't shout, it just exists. Smooth, confident, and completely in control. From the first note, when you know exactly what kind of ride you're in for. What makes this line legendary is its groove. It doesn't need complexity, it doesn't need speed, it needs feel, and it has it in abundance. This is bass as swagger, bass as personality, bass as the soul of the song. And that brings us to the truth behind all of this. Great bass lines don't beg for attention, they earn it. They shape songs quietly. They control the emotional center of the music. You may come for the guitar solo, but you stay because the bass won't let you leave. So the next time someone says bass players just stand there, remember this list. Remember these lines. Remember who was really holding everything together all along. If you enjoyed this deep dive into rock's greatest bass moments, drop a comment with your favorite bass line. And if we missed one you love, and make the case for it. And if you want more music history that gives credit where it's due, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep coming back. And as always, keep that turntable spinning.